everybody. You are watching Know Your Rights with me, Christina Laster, in the National Parents Union. Welcome. I hope that you're all well and I hope that you're all thriving. It's been a while. I was on a little break for 2 weeks and now I'm ready to go. And I hope you are too, because there's a lot we're going to talk about tonight. So go ahead and tag somebody, share this out, just do whatever it takes to get the attention. And I did this show live on purpose at night because I wanted to make sure all of you working parents had an opportunity to get home and get settled and get this information. That's how important it is. So, as you can see, I am joined by two guests here. And I'm going to go ahead and let these ladies say who they are and what they do. And before I do that, though, I want you to see this statement. I'm sure all of you have seen it by now on our page. If you haven't, welcome to the statement. We'll be going over this statement as we talk so you can have the information that you need to effectively advocate for your children. All right. And so I like to give the disclaimer, though I don't have to, that this show is created for parents, by parents, and with our children in mind. All right. We get tired of people talking around us about our kids when we're not around, right? Or at us. And so this is designed for parents by parents so that we can have a dialogue. If you have any questions as we are having this discussion, please feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat. And I will do my very best to get to them. And so with that being said, I would like to announce my guest, and I'm going to start with Khulia. She is our Minnesota organizing director, and she can tell you more about who she is than I can. So go ahead, Khulia. Hello.
Hey, Christina. Hi, everybody. My name is Khulia Pringle. As Christina said, I'm the Minnesota State Director of Organizing with the National Parents Union. And here in Minnesota, we provide one on one support to families as they navigate the education system. We provide Know Your Ed rights, Know Your EO rights, Know Your suspension rights workshops and trainings on policies that affect families in the school district, state and federal level, and then we also organize and mobilize families on those same levels so that all families and all children truly have access to a quality education.
Great. I love that. That's why I got this smile on my face because yes, 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 and yes. Debbie, welcome.
Thank you
Tell
so
me,
much.
tell everyone who you are, what you do, where you're at.
So I'm Debbie Meyer. I'm coming to you from Harlem in New York City, where my husband and I invested about 20 years ago. We are raising our son here. I became a literacy and dyslexia advocate when he was in a public school, and they had no idea how to teach him to read. I married into a dyslexic family. I learned all about it, but I found out it's worse. It's not just a dyslexia crisis. We have a literacy crisis in our nation.
Yes.
Not only are we not teaching dyslexic kids to read, we're not teaching 2/3 of kids to read. And we got to fix it for everybody.
You got to be able to read to do about just about anything. Okay. I was in the store before we get into this statement the other day, and I said, I really feel bad for people that can't read the labels and have allergies. I really feel bad for people that can't read the labels and have diabetes. Okay. And oftentimes brand labels change. So someone can get used to a certain type of thing that they can recognize and that is familiar to them. And then if that changes, guess what? You can accidentally ingest something. And how many people are going to be willing to help someone in the store with their shopping list? Not saying that I'm talking mental shopping list, right? Who's not able to read that label, right? And so that's how serious this is. And I'll tell you, folks, there's not very much that can happen in society in our nation as far as being competitive and being, everything that our children need to be to thrive if they're not able to read and write. Okay. And so we're going to be addressing that. I see a comment in the chat, and here it is. And it says, Dyslexia Allies of W and Y just wrapped up our parent talk to join National Parents Union tonight. Welcome. And I am so glad, right? Debbie, thank you for tuning in and being on. And I know it's 9:42 there. That's how serious we are, y'all. That's how serious we are. So let's look at this NPU statement that we issued today. And I want to really help you understand. It says the system is broken for dyslexic children. Okay. Having dyslexia in a public school is frustrating and demoralizing, emotionally draining, cost prohibitive, and can even take a toll on the mental health of families. Recently, a ruling at the 8th Circuit Court, so 8th Circuit, we're going to get to who that covers, okay, of appeals that could have established case law to positively impact every dyslexic student in 6 states, across 6 states, okay? Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Arkansas. If you're in those states, put a shout out in the chat and say what state you're from. Okay, we're talking to you. We're talking to people in New York. We're talking to people in California too, even though they're not in the 8th Circuit. I'm in California, y'all. Okay, and this is important to me. And so was upended in Minnetonka Public Schools, Independent School District v. MLK. We're going to talk about what that means. The ruling will keep in place an inadequate IEP process where children will not be able to receive aggressive intervention when they are unable to read. I want you to just pause for a minute on that sentence, right? Pause for a minute. The 8th Circuit Court, okay? And the ruling that is going to hinder what was already bad from being stopped. Okay, I'm just gonna say it like that. For all you folks don't understand the legal stuff, it's already bad. It's worse. This makes it worse. How much worse can it get? Right? How much worse can it get? So NPU, alongside dyslexia advocates, will continue to advocate, and we mean that, for literacy to be a priority for all children that fall under the jurisdiction of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Okay? All dyslexic children deserve to have a high quality education and structured reading plan, parent engagement on the decision-making processes of their education, and for courts to provide legal solutions when school districts are not able to provide them with a dynamic education. The current legal precedent is designed to bar children with special needs from a quality education. Okay, that will become apparently clear to all of you when we start to go over the details of the ruling and things that were said in the briefs and all of that. So stick around and share this, like I said. NPU will not tolerate the status quo, which we don't. We fight the status quo every day. Join us in our fight. If you're just tuning in for the first time, join us in our fight against status quo. And will support the parents in their appeal to the circuit and further appeal if necessary to SCOTUS. All right, so there's a lot packed into that statement, and I want to turn it over to Debbie so she can talk about what we mean by this mental health challenge, emotionally draining, demoralizing, frustrating, Debbie. So if you could go ahead and just bring in your insight on that, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you so much. I always think how literacy is a determinant of health and public health, mental health, economic development, and workforce development. It's not just about my kid. It's about our whole community and our whole nation. Um, I remember the days he'd come home so frustrated from school. And when your kid is frustrated, you get frustrated and things escalate. Um, I'm an educated person. I was able to kind of often take myself out of that escalation and come back and support my kid. But sometimes it was hard for me. Now, I'm not someone that works two jobs. I, had a decent amount of energy when I got home from work. I could usually handle it, but not always. But I kind of put myself in the place of someone who works two jobs and maybe doesn't even make between those two jobs enough to feed her family. And how frustrating that must be when your kid is also frustrated and how that escalates. There are studies that show that dyslexic kids are abused more than other kids by their parents. And that is simply because of this stacked on stacked frustration and not understanding that it's not their kid's fault. It's the school's fault. Dyslexia is also hereditary. If one person in your family is hereditary, there is a 65% chance your kid will be as well. So that just talks about our generations of illiteracy. And then we go back to the anti-literacy laws. I mean, this is a big, big issue. It's not my kid and a few white people's kids. This is our nation. And then, dyslexic kids don't really learn differently. They need more good, direct, explicit instruction. But there's a lot of other kids in their classroom that need direct, explicit instruction too. We need to focus on them all.
Right. And there may be, some people that are watching that believe that if you educate children differently in the classroom environment, then some other kids would be robbed of their education. And that is a misconception when we're talking about doing structured reading, right? When we're talking about literacy. And so, Khulia, do you want to, chime in there and also talk about your sentiments when you heard this ruling coming out of the Eighth Circuit, since you're right there in Minnesota?
Yeah, so the ruling is as you stated, a big setback for the Midwest families, based on the fact that our Minnesota Department of Education has stated that schools can't diagnose dyslexia, but we do have a state law that just passed that says all schools should be assessing students for dyslexia. But there's no accountability piece attached to it, just that they should be assessing. And many schools are reporting 0 students showing characteristics for dyslexia, and I highly doubt that. Minneapolis Public, yeah, I saw the look on your face. Yes.
Y'all know I ain't got no poker face. I don't even know how to play poker. So anybody that knows me, I'm just gonna smile, but I got a lot to say. Right?
And Minneapolis Public Schools, the second largest school district, has 42% of its first graders showing characteristics for dyslexia. And there's nothing behind that. So again, this lawsuit, which was filed by, somebody who has some privilege, white, middle class. Minnetonka is one of the richest, whitest, top schools in the state of Minnesota, and she has the suits. So can you imagine the oppressed not having access to even take the step to seek legal ramifications, and to know that if they do, this precedent is saying that their claim, where their children aren't learning how to read, is a setback, or it doesn't exist. So as you said, yes, we need to fight. We've been fighting state laws and local school district laws to try to get structured literacy implemented. We did just get a bill passed for all of Minnesota teachers, if they want to have access to letters training. We are getting an audit on Minneapolis Public Schools benchmark reading curriculum for K-3. So hopefully they're moving in the right directions. All of their associate superintendents, principals will be trained in letters, and then teachers will receive a stipend if they so choose to teach or to take the training. So we're hopeful that at least locally, Some school districts are taking the steps towards the science of reading, but this case is a setback for all families
Yeah,
with kids who don't know how to read, whether or not they're dyslexic or not.
right. It's just it sets the tone for mediocrity. Okay. It just sets the tone and a minimum baseline standard at do what you want. Okay. Business as usual. Need y'all to hear that in special education. Business as usual when it comes to literacy. I've entered meetings, IEP meetings, and I said, are we doing business as usual? Or are we actually going to do something today? Because I don't want to waste time doing business as usual when this child doesn't get a K to 12 education redo. Okay, I need y'all to hear that again. Our children are not going to be able to get to redo their K to 12 education. What they get each grade level as they matriculate is just that. And by fifth grade, if a child is not able to read and write on level, it is very hard for them to make up all kindergarten through fifth and to understand and even tap into numeracy, right?
And I
And
did want to just make one more last point that the fact that the courts said that a balanced literacy intervention was appropriate is shows just how um, not with it that they are to think that's an appropriate intervention strategy when we know that it's like there's dozens of research that states that balanced literacy is not
right, and y'all stay
intervention.
tuned because we are going to be going. I mean, I saw some stuff in this ruling that is a serious red flag for me. Okay. Now, NPU, just to let you know, we'll be sharing this information shortly. Um, and so I hope y'all got your tea today. Get your tea, get your snacks, whatever you need, because we are going to break down these briefs. Okay, I have a brief for y'all that I want to show you some language that's very disturbing. And then MPU, we filed an amicus brief, and I don't know if I said that right. Some people like to call it amicus, amicus. If you're a Latin teacher, talk to me later. But we did, and that means friend of the court. Now, if you have amicus, it means that one person's filing the brief or one entity, and if you have amici, AM, okay, and it's not plural at the end, okay, and you can look this up. That means that there are several entities involved in filing that brief, and so we did file a brief with dyslexia advocates, and we're proud to do so to bring into the court's consciousness about what is happening on the ground, what kind of impact these things have on parents and families who need the services the most. All the children should be able to read. That should be just a rule in society, right? And so we're going to be going through that brief. And I'm going to go ahead and allow Debbie to share some information while I get those briefs up and ready for you guys to look at.
Well, thank you. I'm going to see if this actually works. Share screen. Okay, let's see. All right. So do you guys see a screen with a lot of green kids? Did it work? No.
There it is.
All right. So, this is a class of about 26 kids. And you can see that reading is on a continuum from these dark green kids over to these very light green kids. Every class, there seems to be about 2 kids that read like Formula One drivers or NASCAR drivers are driving the codes, the letters through their brains into meaning. And then there's a bunch of kids that seem to be driving maybe Teslas. A lot is happening, but they're still driving them. Lots is automatic, but they're still driving them. Now, we know no one learns to read naturally, but these kids, before they even got to school, probably got some help at home. Maybe their parents got them some Explode the Code workbooks or Hooked on Phonics videos. Something helped them along the way. But we have a lot of kids. Oh, and these kids can learn despite what Khulia just called balanced literacy. Now, balanced literacy has no definition. We can describe it though. It's haphazard. It's broad. It's just kind of what the teacher wants to do. So they're learning, and it seems to work. But we've got all these kids that are struggling, and they're not learning. They're kind of like they're in a parking lot, misshifting, not getting their cars. They need some systematic instruction. You can't shift from first to fourth gear. You're going to wreck your car. And then we have these 4 kids. They're on a continuum too, as you can see. I tried to make that green get darker and lighter. There's some kids, they're the dyslexic kids. Some kids are mildly dyslexic. Some kids are profoundly dyslexic. Some of those kids could survive if there was a really good RTI system in their school. RTI hardly exists in many places, but a lot of those kids could just benefit from RTI before special ed, but some of them need special ed. And they need it to be evidence-based, structured literacy, hitting phonemic awareness and phonological awareness, alphabetical principles and decoding, fluency, vocabulary, language comprehension, as well as reading comprehension. They need all of that. And they need it with explicit instruction that is systematic, has to be cumulative, and it has to be diagnostic. But what is haphazard instruction? What are they getting? You know, these kids, if you let me continue this car analogy, it's like the oil tank is empty and the teachers are pouring gas into the car. The car doesn't need gas, it needs oil. And then they send the car to the garage and they still don't fix it. So I hope that helps everyone understand a little bit more about what's happening in our classrooms.
All right. So, Khulia, did you? Okay, so someone is asking a question, and I want to pause for questions, because a lot of times we do use abbreviations or acronyms, and I want everyone that's watching this show to understand, right? So, what is RTI? Can someone please give the definition? Response
Sure.
to intervention.
RTI.
I see someone answered it in the chat.
It's response to intervention. So if in an ideal world, if you were teaching pretty good structured literacy and a kid's not getting it, you would give them even better structured literacy, even better instruction. But instead, a lot of times what happens is they get the same bad program taught slower. It doesn't work. Some schools skip RTI altogether and just put a kid in special ed because they get money with special ed, but they still use the same bad curriculum taught more slowly and ineffectively. Some kids are held back and given the same curriculum that failed them the first time. But in a good system, they have good tier 1 instruction, finding most of the kids. The dyslexic kids get some good response and intervention, and 1 or 2 dyslexic kids get some special ed, and all works. But we don't have that in many schools. My son's dyslexia school was filled with kids from Manhattan's private schools. They don't even have good instruction in the private schools.
All right, and so we are going to go into some facts about the case. Again, more than willing to answer questions as they come up. And I want to be able to, pause for anyone that has those kinds of questions and definitely address them. All right, so can you guys see this? I can try to zoom in. If you can't see it, let me see. Right here. Yep, see? Got my grandma eyes ready to go, y'all. Can you see it? Yes? Okay. All right. As you can see, that says educational equity for dyslexic students. So let's go through this, information that was provided last year. to us. And as you can see, there's a date on there. So this is how long this has been going on. So here's an overview, right? A dyslexic family from Minnetonka, a typical dyslexic student story. And I'm sharing this directly out of my, you know, folder. So you see all that other stuff coming up. Anyway, attributes of a broken public school system, M.L.K. versus Minnetonka Public Schools, and you can see independent school district. That's what ISD means, number 276. Federal law and relevant Supreme Court decisions, leverage this in court case to drive change, create equity for all dyslexic students. So here is what we need to know, okay? I'll just stop pressing the mouse because I think this will go away if I stop pressing the mouse. MLK is currently, now this was in 2022. Oh, there we go. A rising fifth grader, reads at second grade level despite having an average IQ. Okay, so you see that, right? His sister excels academically in high school, able to access a variety of school-sponsored programs. Parents are educated, resourceful, and principled. Want to empower other dyslexic families, kind of like what we're doing here, right? When you know better, you do better, and you teach others as well. District markets themselves as the best in the state. And so originally, of course, there was a lawsuit. That's how it ended up in the appellate court. And so the judge found that Minnetonka's assertions are not consistent with their actions. That's what I call that business as usual, y'all. MLK versus Minnetonka is a watershed case for dyslexia. Leverage this MS case to drive change. All right. So here's the same sad story, and we're tired of hearing it. Okay. And we're also tired of the audio not matching the video, right? Words, actions not matching, actions, words not matching. You know, that's no. Early indicators that the child is at risk for dyslexia. That was what was going on, right? School urges the family to trust them and that they are educational experts. How many times have y'all heard that? We know best. Okay. No, actually, I'm the parent. I'm the most credible source of information about my kid. I know what I am asking, even if I don't have all the right fancy words. Okay. And so don't ever let anybody talk you out of your parental instinct or authority. I say that and I can't say it enough. Don't let people talk you out of your parental instinct and authority. Okay. By saying that they know better than you about your kid. I've had this issue at the doctor before, y'all. Like, no, I don't know what kind of thing you're looking at, what kind of chart. And maybe your chart works most of the time. I don't know. I wouldn't say it. We'll talk about that another time. But for this particular situation, I need you to hear me because I understand that there's something different. Maybe my child's an outlier situation. I don't know. But I need you to do what I'm asking as far as collect this information and make a plan accordingly. Okay, I've had these conversations with the doctor, like I said. Family suffers, becomes aware, advocates, engages in conflict and compromise. Okay, sounds like that back and forth, spinning on the wheel, IEP type of situation. Student, despite the hard work and average intelligence, continues to struggle and cannot read at grade level. Family hires private tutors, advocates, and experts. Exhausted and defeated, the family arrives at a crossroad. Those who have the stamina and finances consider legal options or expensive private schools. We know that to be true. The student outcomes vary depending on the services received. So let me just pause for a second, right? Because there's a lot. There's a lot in this about the same sad story. And I know that some of you viewing can totally relate to that back and forth. That back and forth, you're asking, it's like a tug of war, okay? In meetings, trying to get your child the literacy intervention, okay? I've seen this happen. I have personally experienced this tussling back and forth over allergy free foods being in the environment to keep my child safe. Okay. Why do I got to fight about removing oranges because my child carried an EpiPen to school? Some of y'all might can relate. And I had to tussle for 2 years to get the allergen removed from the environment. It ought not be that way, y'all. This is ridiculous. Okay. I want to say this, and I'm going to let some other people chime in here on this same sad story part. And it is to me very egregious that we have everywhere in the United States compulsory attendance laws. Compulsory attendance means that you have to comply with the education standards set by the state, okay, saying that there is a minimum age that your child has to attend school and a maximum age that they are allowed to go to school. And because there are those compulsory attendance or education laws, and you can look it up. I want you to look up what is the compulsory attendance law or compulsory education law in my state. What type of education am I required by state law to provide my child in elementary and secondary school? I want you to look at that, okay? And if you do not comply with those compulsory attendance laws, the state can come after you. I've seen it happen. Okay. But then when you comply and you're saying, but my child needs to be adequately educated and accommodated in doing that, then there's a lack of compliance. That's hypocritical. Okay. I find that the hypocrisy in this all. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute because I can go on a whole tangent about hypocrisy in this space, and it allows someone else to chime in on this sad story part.
I'm just gonna say it's sad that it's a sad, same old sad story. It's just sad that parents have to fight. And again, those who are privileged and have resources may be able to buy themselves out of this sad story, and sometimes not. In the case of MLK, they were able to, at least file some legal ramifications, one twice, and then in the appeals court have this decision handed down. But can you imagine the average, not the average, but oppressed people, folks who don't haven't even may not have even heard of the word dyslexia, or maybe their kid isn't dyslexia but suffer from poor instruction, suffering from a balanced literacy instruction, suffer from a teacher who hasn't had a letters training and doesn't understand language and all of and the science of reading. You have a black mom, a Latina mom, a Somali mom, who doesn't have the resources, knows something's wrong, can see it based on, sometimes I've seen it, like sometimes they have older brothers and sisters, and the parent says, well, there's something different because the older kid didn't experience this, and they're not where the other kid was. And then they try to go to the school assures them that everything's going to be fine, and then the next thing you know, the kid has an IEP, the kid's getting suspended, the kid loses interest, fast forward, kid drops out, kid, school to prison pipeline, ends up either to prison. And as we came up with earlier, the read or die slogan, like literally, you may physically die because you're in a situation where you may choose criminal activity because you're not able to engage in society because you can't read, but you can die mentally, emotionally, financially. You can't read your healthcare papers. You have to depend on others. It may be an embarrassing situation where you're not even, have self-esteem or worth about yourself because you're not able to function. You have to depend on other people. You can't read the application for a job, housing, nothing. So you're going to die at some point, whether, like I said, it's physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially, if you don't have the foundational skills to read. And it's just a sad, sad story. And we keep turning this wheel like a Ferris wheel. And then the most oppressed people, we wonder why, there's disparities in all of the, like Minnesota is home to every disparity that you could possibly think of. We hone in on it. We're really good at disparities and wonder why.
See, that's why I am all for disruption. And people have been taught that disruption is a bad thing. But if you're a business guru, you can teach disruption and get a lot of money going around the country training on business disruption because you can't enter the market unless you enter disruptively. Okay. And so, even if we were to look at the law of motion, we ain't gonna talk about that tonight, though. You have to be able to stop something that's just spinning and spinning out of control. Okay, and that requires force. That does. And so, I don't want you guys to feel bad, parents and families. I'm talking to you. When you have to be the one to continue to disrupt the status quo-ish type of behavior, right? Because if we don't, it'll keep spinning and spinning and spinning out of control, and that's where you get that feeling of that hamster on the wheel. And I'll tell you what, I don't like amusement parks very much, and I definitely don't like merry-go-rounds. Okay, I don't want to be on the merry-go-round. I probably will be the one sick and ready to get off, and that's what this feels like when we keep having to do that. I'm not going to do it. We have to be able to do everything in our ability and together collectively to disrupt this type of behavior and these sad stories. All right, Debbie, do you have anything you want to chime in? If not, I'm going to go to the timeline. We can't hear you, Debbie. Looks like you
I
are
want to
saying
talk a little
something
bit
good.
about how even the most common definitions of dyslexia have bias. When we talk about it being an unexpected ability, despite it's unexpected despite their cognitive abilities. Well, you have to expect the kid can read before something can be unexpected. And so there's a lot of bias just built into the definition of dyslexia. And we have to make sure we get that out because, it's not unexpected. It's neurobiological. You can see this when kids are 4 and 5 years old. You can assess for risk. Shouldn't be unexpected.
So we have a comment.
Mm-hmm. Our teachers, I don't even blame it on our teachers. They go to teaching college and they're not even taught about this. They're not licensed by their ability to teach reading. So until we change the systems, at the court level, at the state licensing level, all we can do is spend taxpayer money on retraining the teachers who should have learned it in teaching college and didn't.
And I'm glad you said taxpayer money, right? Because some people get comfortable and they think the money's theirs. And this is a public education that is publicly funded, and literacy is a public good and service. Okay. And so again, we have a comment here. Speaking of money, in Minnesota, it is $35,000 per year for dyslexic school, but they won't accept anyone with a history of bad behavior. Looks like the conditions are being manipulated there, right? Talking about that control of and manipulation of conditions that set people up to fail, right? And $60,000 for a school that gives one-on-one instruction, very expensive. That is a lot of people's annual salary. I just want you to think about that. So we, the taxpayers, we the people, have provided for the compulsory attendance laws to be complied with, public education, that we the people should have a say. And I believe that this is egregious. Again, the manipulation of conditions. Watch the conditions, y'all. Watch the conditions. All right. And so here we are with a timeline. In 2013, preschool urged parents to seek an evaluation by the school. The evaluation and reevaluation both contain data indicating dyslexia. Okay. Yet appropriate interventions were delayed. 2014 to 2019, parents sought private OT speech and reading services. Hodgepodge of balanced literacy reading interventions over a 4-year period yielded little to no progress. Parents requested mediation and a facilitated team meeting via the Department of Education. The school district refused. The Department of Education investigated and only found that the school district, in violation of a minor procedural error in the IEP process, parents commissioned an IEE, which means an individual evaluation. If you guys don't know, I'll be putting information when I pause in the chat on the timeline and all the information you need to know about those independent evaluations. I'm sorry if I missaid that a minute ago. About those independent evaluations in the IEP process. If you need to know more about an IEE, you can go back to some of the Know Your Rights or some of our policy shows, and that information is shared for you because we have covered this before. Okay. And so they commissioned an IEE after the school refused. Parents hired a special education attorney to exercise their due process rights, prevailing with a court order. The school district then appealed the court ruling. Okay. So I want you to see that this timeline started in 2013 and there was plenty of opportunity to, meet the parents' requests. Okay. I have to say at this juncture that parents typically are not looking to go to court. They're typically looking to have their child receive a quality education. After said parents follow the protocols and processes and procedures all the way and continue to be failed and see that their child is being failed, the last stage for them is I am going to seek a legal remedy, which is in the rights of the parents to do. Okay. But look at all of the steps that happened in between that they took to try to rectify the situation on their own. And not being able to do so, then sought legal remedy in the courts. For those of you that think that we're just litigious, maybe they're not, but I am, right? And so, I do believe that if you try every single other remedy to pursue justice and you're not getting it, then it is the obligation of the courts to provide justice in the form of whatever remedy that they can. All right. And so as we can see, that is the timeline. I am now going to stop sharing this screen. And I want to bring up the brief that was filed in that case where the school district appealed. Okay, let's go.
And while you do that, I just wanted to add the difference of living in a mega district where you're suing. If you sue for something, you're kind of suing an anonymous person in some office in your DOE. But if you live in a suburban district or a smaller district, and you're actually suing your neighbor who serves on the board of the school board, and it's a much different thing because you see them in the grocery store. And so a lot of parents don't feel good about suing their school district. It's a really hard thing to do when you're suing your neighbor.
Yeah, it really is. And then you kind of, you're like, I'm not looking to, exhaust the taxpayers or anything like that. But that's what I'm saying. This is an ultimate thing when people have made the decision that they're going to go ahead and take it to court. And so I just want people to be aware of that. I have seen bad comments, about parents and things who have decided to sue. And I'm like, they have probably exhausted all other possible remedies, and really tried for years before they even take that type of approach. And I just want people to be aware of that. And then to also not be afraid to utilize that, even though we see that in some situations, of course, you might have to go back. And so let's look at, all right, can y'all see this? Okay, so here you can see, and let me go ahead and zoom in on this. See this? An educational lawyer costs $400 an hour. Okay, that we know. Some of them do low bono work. Some clinics do pro bono work, but this is not a cheap fix. And if you can think of the amount of money that the district spent on this as well with the appeal. Okay, so we're going to look at what was said in this brief. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, Minnetonka Public Schools Independent School District versus MLK by and through its parents. Okay, on appeal from the United States District Court. Okay, now this brief told you what amicus means, right? Friend of the courts, is from the Minnesota School Boards Association, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, and the Minnesota Administrators for Special Education. And I want you just to look at this, okay? So as you can see, here is all of the information, the table of contents. I am going to, when I stop the show, I'm gonna drop all of these links in the chat so that you can see this stuff on your own. We don't have time to go through all of the pages, but I did want you guys to see that what was stated, who was involved, and who filed briefs. We filed the brief, and I'll be showing that as well, and have a strong interest in this case. Okay, so you see that, right? If you're in Minnesota, you definitely need to see what's going on here. But let's look at, there's a particular part that I want you to look at. Okay, 1 second. Sorry, my screen is kind of glitching a little bit. Give me 1 second. Debbie, if you have something you want to say while I get my screen fixed here, that would be okay.
All right. So I went to Washington, D.C. I'm sure some of these other dyslexia advocates on here might have joined me for a roundtable on the 21st Century Dyslexia Act. Senator Cassidy wants to raise dyslexia up to a higher level in IDEA and call it out itself. Right now it's under specific learning disability. But he's basing the definition he's using for dyslexia on a story from 1896. If that's not startling you, what was happening in 1896? We have to update things. If they haven't worked yet, how are they going to start working now? We really have to change this. We cannot use an unexpected difficulty in reading into federal law and the IDEA. So I hope you'll talk to your congressman about this and make sure they do not adopt a definition that excludes most of our kids.
All right, so as you can see, I'm just going to keep this brief up on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. I have some issues with my screen glitching a little bit, and so I'm going to put this brief in the chat. Can you still see the brief?
Yes.
Okay. And so I had some really concerning thoughts as I, was just reading the brief, right? In one statement, it said, there is no doubt that this child and case evoke great sympathy. As educators and administrators, Amicus hope to help every student succeed and wish for positive outcomes in every case. But not every educational issue has a legal solution. Well, we wanted an educational solution, right? But that didn't happen. And so without an educational solution, then what are the parents to do who are under compulsory attendance rules to educate their child, right? And so that was throughout something I found really, really concerning. The IDEA was not intended to impose comprehensive liability. Now, I saw the words together, comprehensive liability, in a statement from people that are supposed to care about children, and immediately I thought of insurance coverage. Okay, comprehensive liability. That's like, you have comprehensive or you have general liability. Who refers to children that they care about that way? Is this an asset or liability? What is this? What are we talking about here? It does not indicate a concern or empathy or compassion or care about the well-being of a child succeeding and thriving when you say there's no comprehensive liability. Okay, I don't even like that term. And so the idea was not intended to impose comprehensive liability for an impossible situation on one school district. Okay, so I that seems to be rejecting responsibility and accountability. But we'll just go further. Schools must continue to be permitted to make reasoned educational decisions with the resources they have. Now we're back at resources again. It always comes down to that, right? But reasonable. What is reasonable to a school besides educating a child to be able to read and write? I find that to be reasonable. What about y'all? If you're watching and you think a reasoned decision is to make sure that children are literate, go ahead and chime in the chat. I'd love to know what you're thinking about the words comprehensive liability, and also reasoned decisions, right? Is it not reasonable for parents to ask for their children to be literate? And I'm just pulling out chunks, y'all. I do want to say that. But I just found that language when speaking about the public education system that is supposed to educate children, teach them how to be literate, in this to be a little concerning, a lot concerning, especially if these were the people that are responsible for making sure that my child succeeded as they matriculated through the K-12 education system. I'd be concerned. Comprehensive liability sounds like a Geico commercial. Okay. All right. And so the public education system, by all means, should provide a high quality education as a solution before the situation turns legal. It's important to note that legal solutions are not the primary way. This is me talking about this brief, in which parents go to try to rectify a situation. Okay. Typically, a parent will follow all protocols, and after being denied and disappointed, and emotionally and fiscally vanquished, with the outcomes that have availed nothing, then a legal solution becomes their final hope at a quality education solution for their children. So I hope I cleared that up, right? Hope I cleared that up. And then with regards to, just being reasonable, I think that it was very beyond reasonable that the family in this situation attempted to do everything in their power, even taking this all the way, right? Like, we're going to take this all the way after years of being failed. Okay. So for those of you that are chiming in, like I said, if you have a question or whatever, go ahead and drop that in the chat, and definitely want to hear from you. So if you have a comment, drop it in, and you can share this information out as well. I am going to stop screen sharing for a moment. And Debbie and Khulia, if you want to chime in here, that'd be good. I want to bring up our brief that MPU filed with dyslexia advocates. All right. So that brief is right here. Okay, so I wanted everyone to understand that we did file a brief and to know why, right? Why it was important for us to chime in here. And I don't see that. Okay, I see a comment here. Close this. I'm not the computer tech-ish type of person. So thanks for bearing with me as I bring up this information for you to be able to see. All right. Let's go. Maybe right here. Oh, yep. Let's see. Is this the one? And then we'll bring up the ruling. Yep, that's it right there. So here's a comment. Reading and writing, we'll we'll work on the comments and then we'll go over to the brief that MPU filed. Should be most important. I keep hearing from high school parents that their children have been well accommodated in the public school, but still can't independently write a paper. I ran into a group of college students the other day, and they weren't able to grasp how to read a statement. And they tried to share that statement with each other to share reading, and they still couldn't do it. And I was appalled. Okay. I just, I felt like, wow, wow. That was the only words that I could say.
That
And
66% of kids who aren't reading at fourth grade level continues at eighth grade level. It continues through high school. And it's only the 1/3 of kids that ever go to college and succeed. Some of those 66% try to get to college, but they don't succeed. That 33% of kids that read young are the ones that are continuing through.
yeah, and then what kind of classes can you really access at college? So yes, thank you for your comment. Let's go to the next one. We have a similar story with FAPE. And for those of you that don't know what IE, FAPE, and all of that stuff is, again, we have instructional videos on this stuff around special education, conversations that we've had with lawyers to help you understand your rights. And so go to the National Parents Union page, and in the search bar, you can put up Know Your Rights, or you can put in MPU policy hour or advocacy boot camp training, whatever, and you will find those videos, or just search through the videos and you'll see this information so that you can be aware, just in case you don't understand what some of these terms mean. And so we have a similar story with FAPE for our son who has autism and epilepsy. He cannot read at the age of 20. He does have low vision, but no extra supports or interventions were implemented until we fought and fought. However, we still cannot get an intensive, structured, implicit phonics program for our son. We're in the appeal process for our first child was lost. I am so sorry. Keep on appealing. And I hope that you win. Okay. And again, I cannot even tell you how much our lawyer is costing. We make a monthly payment. People are going into debt, y'all, to have their children be literate. Okay, is this not a function of the public school system? I mean, if there is a public school expert that would like to identify themselves watching this, that can say why literacy is not a function of the public school system, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, I really would. I want to know, what is the mentality here. Okay, it's an injustice that we have to hire a lawyer to help our son get his system of supports and are still trying. Keep it up. I know that it can be vanquishing, and I don't mind if my guests have to go. I do know it's late, and so I appreciate the time that you guys have spent here. All right, and so let's go to the brief. If you want to chime in here, Debbie, please feel free. I'm going to bring the brief up. I feel this parent's pain here.
I can't agree more. It's just so expensive. We won our fight, but just the amount of money we invested to win our fight was amazing. And then to think of what the taxpayers paid, the difference between what it would have cost to stay in the public school and what it costs to go to the specialized school. This is, I usually talk about why literacy is important, what is costing our society, and then how to fix it.
Right. And what's really interesting to me, and I think I had this conversation with you before, Debbie, is that there are elected officials, governors. I live in California. Our governor has stated that he's dyslexic, right? Who have the ability to really highlight this and work on progressive steps forward. But yet I notice a lot of silence. Right? I notice a lot of silence.
Our mayor here in New York City is dyslexic, and he has started something. But
Oh, that's good.
the challenge is now, how do we make it sustainable past his mayoral term? And how do we make sure it's all implemented well?
And here in Minnesota, it's been the Republican Party, actually in the Senate, who's been leading the charge in the science of reading, as I said stated earlier. Thanks to Decoding Dyslexia Minnesota, we got letters training passed so that every teacher in Minnesota who wants it can receive it paid for. And next year, Senator Chamberlain, who is the Republican Senate, is willing to start helping, as you stated earlier, Debbie, making sure that pre-service teachers have the training that they need in order to be trained in the science of reading. Like, we need to make sure our teachers are prepared. We need to make sure our current teachers are prepared. And if not, we're gonna. I don't understand how folks can just continue on to allow children to continue to fail and then wonder why we have poverty, and everybody wants to fight poverty. Well, let's teach folks how to read. Folks can read, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It's like
Why do we
having
have recidivism in our
Right.
prisons?
Yes.
Already 50% of prisoners shown in studies are functionally illiterate due to dyslexia and poor instruction. And it's not just that they're dyslexic and they weren't taught to read.
it's like
If
having
you're not
clean
taught to
water,
read
right?
ever, what options do they have when they come out of prison?
Yeah, I see here a shout out to Decoding Dyslexia. Minnesota is a powerhouse. Thank you for sharing that. It's always good to get appreciation. And so, to Decoding Dyslexia Minnesota, you're a powerhouse. All right. Keep up the
Absolutely.
powerhousing.
Shout out to Rachel Berger.
Whoop, whoop. All right. When I've asked a special ed why they can't offer more services, they actually said to me, "You may have to accept that your child will never." What? See, the things that come out of people's mouth, y'all watch them because they're speaking what they mean, and that's why I had an issue with the comprehensive liability and all that other mumble jumble that I'm like, what is this?
I just
Talking about children.
I just got a message from MLK. I just want to read a little bit. The school's
Yes.
own data showed that MLK entered fourth grade with the late kindergarten reading level after 4 years of reading interventions via his IEP. MLK's literacy expert testified that he was on a trajectory to graduate high school with a fourth grade reading level prior to his court ordered interventions. This Eighth Circuit ruling tells school district that this is okay.
Yeah, it does. It sets the tone because now they like, well, So let's go to the next item on here, and that would be the. Let me go to the. All right, all right, and so we filed a brief too, and really wanted to just take the time to talk about why, right? Take the time to talk about why we did that. This is not. Stop sharing. Got the wrong bar up here. Sorry, y'all. Okay. I need to have my glasses on. It's that time of night. All
Christina,
right.
I do have to jump off real
Go
quick,
ahead.
but thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
And I will definitely be sharing more about how parents or the viewers that are watching can support the ongoing case and appeal information. Thank you so much, Khulia. I appreciate your time. And so here you see that we did file a brief, and for anyone that has to go, I understand it is getting late, but we wanted to make sure that this information got out. And you can see that it was done with the National Parents Union Dyslexia Advocates. Now, I wanted to just really highlight this part right here, right? And let me zoom in a little bit, okay? And so, as you can see, those are three main things, right? This is what we care about as parents. This is what we care about as parent advocates. And this is what we wanted to instill into the court's consciousness, okay? And so the IDEA, for those of you that don't know, gives parents a crucial and extremely difficult role in its implementation. And this is what we were talking about when we were saying another sad story, right? This is where we're talking about when we're saying we don't want to be on the roller coaster ride. We're trying to advocate in a way that is meaningful and produces outcomes, right? And so that was brought up in this brief. Okay. Parents face multiple significant barriers to identifying the violations of the idea. How many of you sit down at the IEP table and automatically know your rights within the IEP structure and framework, right? How many of you even understand what's on that procedural safeguard paper that you're given, right? It's an emotional time, rightfully so. You're like really looking at a whole bunch of people. You feel like you're on trial. There's a whole bunch of people on the other side of the table. And how do you understand what's going on? I just really want to say that there are significant barriers, right? And understanding underneath the barriers, understanding the nature of the child's disability, which is right, okay. You might not find out till second or third grade, and then there might be other things compounded onto that. So that is absolutely true. And so I wanted you guys to understand how we brought our parent voice into the court consciousness through the brief. Okay. Understanding the range of education options available and the informal practices of the special education system. Understanding the law. That's why I do this show. There's barriers to parents and families understanding the law. How many of you thought you were going to have to be a lawyer, a judge, a governor, and a banker and own a whole bunch of property just to have your kid educated, right? You never thought that when you went to that local school and said, I need an enrollment packet, right? You didn't think you were going to have to be content and standard and curriculum experts, right? And so these are things that we understand dynamically as parent advocates and parents who have been in this fight. I'm telling you, I've been dropping an kid off at elementary school for 3 decades now, y'all. 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so like I'm like a OG in the K to 12 education space. But a lot of times people are just starting and they don't understand this stuff, and that's why we do this show. Okay. Now the third thing is that the district's court's interpretations of the IDEA statute of limitation is inconsistent with congressional intent to ensure robust parental involvement and implementing the IDEA. So we will be sharing this information again so that you can read, but I want you to see for yourself in front of you, and for me to just tell you about the way that parents can collectively stand up and fight back. This is one way, right, that we were trying to really, in a robust way, bring forth the argument of parents, not just MLK, but the other parents who similarly situated would suffer in these situations. Okay. And so again, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Debbie, do you have anything you want to chime in on that? If not, I'm going to bring up the court ruling and then we'll be almost out of here.
No, I'm just really happy, and I really think it's important to bring more than the dyslexia community along with you on these fights. I think it has to be a bigger community. So I'm just really glad that NPU is involved in this.
Right. I mean, hey, whoever is watching out there, right? What a better way to use your platform, if you have one, than to pursue learning justice for children, right? I tell people all the time, I am not a Democrat or Republican, and I'm not, right? Even though that's none of nobody's business and they can whatever. But I'm on the party with the kids, right? Because they're born into a political party. So why is this highly political and politicized? They are not born with a classification. I was in the hospital with my kids every single time. I gave them a name, not a stigma or a label, right? I don't remember filling out a voter registration card for my kids when they were born. So it's disturbing that this stuff becomes highly politicized. And also, I want my children, just like everyone else's children, to thrive. And so I feel like if my child is going to be in the education system, treat my child like you would do yours. and that's why we collectively pursue justice. So if you have a platform by which you can do that, please highlight these situations and utilize your platform in that way, because you are helping a child to have a better future and a hope. Okay. The Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education stands with MLK and their parents. Thank you so much. See, that's the kind of support we're talking about, right? The kind of support we're talking about. I was told the same thing by my child's teacher. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It really is. I have thoughts about my children, and it doesn't seem to match the aspirations of the education system. And the education system is intended to help the children, what's supposed to be, reach their fullest potential, not stifle them, not manipulate conditions to hinder them or fail them, and not control parent voice in a way that parents are fighting and trying to engage. And then the narrative is that it's our fault or our kids' fault. That we didn't, succeed because they did not, because they manipulated conditions and hindered success, but it happened to be your fault. We're just going to blame the parents and the kids for the failure. No, absolutely not. That's where the disruption comes in, and that's where we're here to say enough of this madness, right? All right, and so let's go to the ruling, and then we're going to get out of here, folks, and I will come back and drop all of this information in the chat. I do want to share some information on next steps too after I go to the ruling. All right, let's see here. Oh, this is my notes. So I don't think y'all want to read my notes. Let's go to the ruling. If I close everything else, Debbie, I think I'll get to the ruling faster. What do you think? Okay. Screen share. All right. Can y'all see this? All right. And so as you see, this is still new information. Please help share this information out, because some people don't even know. That's why we're doing the show. You see that date filed 7/29/2022. Okay. 7/29/2022. Okay. And I want to take you guys all the way down to the judge's, this last paragraph. I'm highly concerned, right? And so let's go down, and this is about, let's see, 10 pages. You see it right there. Okay. Now, here's the paragraph that I had the concerns with most reading through this. Okay. And let me zoom in, because it's too late to be with the shenanigans on the tiny writing on the wall here. All right. Ultimately, the parties dispute what reasonably calculated means in this case. The IDEA does not require a school district to maximize a student's potential or provide the best possible education at public expense. Nor does it require specific results. And there's some cases, y'all can look them up, whatever you want. I don't have time to break those down today, but they were there. This is not a case where the student made no progress or regressed over the years, nor is it the case where any improvement was undercut by unaddressed struggles in other areas. Although M.L.K. cannot read, wait a minute, if you hear all of the other stuff before that, and then you say that one statement, although M.L.K. cannot read at his grade level, okay? Well, what grade level is he reading at? Is he supposed to be at? Okay, how is he going to access information, right? The IDEA looks for improvement, not mastery. His IEP demonstrate that he made progress in reading as well as other academic goals. The school district fulfilled its obligation under IDEA, and so that decision was vacated. Now, I want to know, and Debbie, tell me if I'm wrong, but are we paying? Is the public expense to not help children thrive or reach their fullest potential?
It's crazy. I was going to put in the chat the link to the Andrew F. case.
Yes,
Um,
I have that, but I
yeah,
don't have time to share
but
that. Yes.
um, not only, especially teachers that went to public teaching colleges when our taxpayers first invested in our teachers. And then we invest in our schools. And sometimes we invest in professional development of our teachers. All this to produce kids that can't read.
So, what is the public expense? Are we publicly funding for the bare minimum, or a little bit above the bare minimum, or are we looking to maximize a child's potential? I mean, I was disturbed, right? And I see more that needs to be done in this area.
Oh,
Okay, right.
there.
I feel like these are fighting words if someone said that about my kid. Like, God, yeah, no, they don't need to reach their fullest potential. That's a reasonable calculation.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I've given presentations when people have asked me if I thought our poor literacy instruction was part of the new Jim Crow.
you said it.
And, I don't know if it's that nefarious, but certainly the same results.
Right. And so all of this information is going to be shared with you. I wanted to give everyone information to know what is next, right? We don't just want to, talk about this stuff without there being some next steps. And so, just to let you guys know, I heard from the parents in the case, and they will be planning to meet tomorrow, right? And really more information will be coming out. The best way, because a lot of the time lawyers are doing this work, and the parents do run out of funds, and so dyslexia advocates have been a huge support. And so anyone that feels led, I'm going to drop that link in the chat, to support the appeal can definitely do that through supporting dyslexia advocates. Okay. So I will drop their link in the chat. I will drop their information in the chat. There's information that they have posted. You can also go on their Facebook page and look at some of the information that they posted and keep up with this case. We at MPU are going to be supporting the parents however we can, even if it's just like having frequent discussions, right, around what it is next that needs to be done and how other parents can collectively join this fight. And then, really understanding, just what is dynamically going on. So this will not be the only discussion that we have about this. If you want to know more about dyslexia, watch the Read or Die. We have something called Read or Die on our Facebook page. Tap into those resources. Okay. I'm working on uploading a special education toolkit so that all of you will be able to have the ability to know on the spot what is going on in your IEP meeting, what you should do before approaching that. Looking at it, I'm adding that dyslexia toolkit to this information that will be granted to you, and then just having that power, right? Like having the knowledge for yourself so that you're able to advocate, okay? So that you're able to effectively advocate. You want to be fully informed. Here is the link for dyslexia advocates. You could definitely support the cause by clicking on that link and look at their website and everything that they have to offer. They've been a huge support, and we can want to continue to work with them to bring learning justice to parents that are in these types of situations that are really tragic. And because the circuit court covers a large amount of territory, all of you need to know your rights going into this school year and how to advocate for your child through the IEP process. Don't go without knowledge. As a matter of fact, don't IEP alone. That's a website. You might want to check it out. Okay. Understood. That's a website. You might want to check it out. If you have a notion that you're going to walk into drama or trauma going into an IEP meeting, please make sure you go grab a neighbor and say, come with me. Okay. Don't walk in there alone. Grab a friend, contact a National Parents Union advocate, for help. If you go to nationalparentsunion.org, you can find information on staff in your area, okay, or reach out to us through our messenger, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And for those of you that are watching on Twitter or YouTube, I will be coming back to do my very best to put the links to information that I'm dropping in the Facebook chat into those other areas so that you have access to them. But you can definitely visit our Facebook page. Debbie, do you have a final word? I'm going to let the good people that are watching go. We've been here for an hour and 20 minutes, and we'll be back. We'll be back to discuss more.
Well, I'm delighted so many people came on. But Christina, could we do a nuts and bolts of writing an amicus brief and filing an amicus brief before these are due? Because maybe
Yes.
there's other people here that want to file some briefs and are just kind of scared of what to do to make it happen.
Yes, we can definitely do that. Every Thursday, y'all, for those of you that don't know, I have this Know Your Rights show. Okay. And that's the kind of stuff that we do. Okay. Talking about how to even do civil rights, Office for Civil Rights complaints, right? What does that look like? Walking you through that process. So that you, as the parent, have your voice, and it's not you're not robbed of your voice to advocate for your child. Okay, someone says ask to have a parent member at your IEP meetings. Definitely need someone that you trust. Okay. Me, because like I said, I've been dropping a kid off at elementary school for 3 decades. I'm willing to just offer someone a Starbucks card. Let's go. I don't care. 5 people. Come on, let's go. right. At in my neighborhood, at my church, whatever that may look like. I'm just giving you guys examples of people that you can ask, right? And family members, whoever's available, right? Like grandmas and grandpas are great. I'm a grandma, okay, and I would definitely just go for emotional support. And so, yes, we can do more. And if you guys have requests, specific requests of information that you would like to see covered on this show, drop that information in the chat. And I'm going to do my very best to make sure that I help you to be fully informed and know your rights, breaking things down step by step, piece by piece, law by law, rule by rule, regulation and code and policy, board policies, all of that, so that you understand your rights. Thank you so much for watching Know Your Rights with me, Christina Laster, the Director of Policy and Legislation here with the National Parents Union. I hope that you all stay well. I hope that you all thrive. And Debbie, if you want to take us out, then go ahead and say your final words.
Everyone have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
How can people find you, Debbie, over in New York?
I'm in New York City. It's you can get me at decodingdyslexianyc@gmail.com.
All right. Y'all
All right.
heard it. So if you're in New York, reach out. If you have any questions and you need help, you are so welcome. To all my guests, I will see you again. Have a wonderful evening and a lovely day tomorrow. Goodbye.